Our next topic will be social development. Erik Erikson was a student of Sigmund Freud and became very well known in his own right. Freud's theories stages are often termed psychosexual, whereas Erikson's stages are termed psychosocial. Do you know how many stages would be in Erikson's theory? 6? No, actually it would be 8. Now in this class, I'll only ask you to know a few. The first one and 1 or 2 that are most likely associated with your current age. But right now let's focus on the first stage. This would have the format of all future stages as well, a good possible outcome versus the bad. And the first year is a stage of trust versus mistrust. Depending on the parenting or caretaker's behaviors, the child will learn to trust the world, people, and them. For example, if when a child cries, they're typically comforted quickly, the child will learn trust. If they're hungry and they're fed quickly, they'll learn trust. If they're wet and if they're changed quickly, they'll learn trust. But if a child lays there and hungry or crying from being needed for change, cries and sometimes gets their needs met, sometimes doesn't, sometimes promptly, maybe sometimes for a very extended time, that child will learn to mistrust the world, people, and in particular, their parents. Erikson's second stage, as we just noted, was autonomy versus shame and doubt. If you're not familiar with the word autonomy, no problem, but it's a good college level vocabulary word, so if you don't have it, you should add it and own it. So autonomy means be able to do it yourself. It means to self-ability. So stage of self-ability versus shame when you don't do it or doubt that you can do it at all. This is the age of terrible twos, which, by the way, not every child goes through. The terrible twos, when you get the tantrums, the highly negativistic moments, the no becoming the favorite word, followed by perhaps me do, and perhaps also mine. So with autonomy, they're going to assert their own independence. So parents want to allow them to do what they're capable of doing safely on their own, with often support, or in other words, we call it scaffolding. The shame and doubt, fear you're not able to do it. Shame when perhaps literally, as in toilet training, you mess up. So the conflict that may or may not occur during the stage will be minimized and ending by the stage end. I love this little picture I attached to here, definitely reflecting the negativistic moments of the stage for one child. Let's consider temperament. It's early appearing, so a certain component of it is innate, a certain component is built in. A considerable component is genetic. But still, as the child gets older, the environment has a bigger impact on temperament. And we'll see that in the next slide. What is exactly temperament? It's a stable pattern of the way that child tends to react to situations, people, the environment, and their ability, whether strong or not so strong, to self-regulate their own emotions. We can see that the most common temperament type by far is the easy temperament. Difficult, the odds are with you as a parent that you won't get difficult, but if you are a difficult baby, beware the parental curse. I hope you get one just like you. Slow to warm up like it sounds, the child takes a longer time to adjust to new situations, new people, but unlike the difficult child, they do come around and they're not as negativistic. If you're comfortable with that, let's go to the next slide. If you do have access to a parent who can tell you about yourself as a baby, maybe inquire to see your temperament type, which might tell you what possibly to expect if you do become a parent yourself. So we can see that there is a strong genetic underpinning to temperament, but then again, environment plays half the role. Nutrition can impact temperament. Malnutrition, long-term nutritional deprivation can negatively impact brain health and have long-term lasting effects. Caregiving quality, especially in terms of daycare, we know that constant turnover of staff, even if the staff is caring, constant turnover of staff can negatively impact temperament and other aspects of the child's experience, including cognitive. Prenatal factors, which would include nutrition, toxins, and so on. Culture, how parents and people interact with the baby, no small part of it. And also the gender stereotyping found in that particular culture. So what is expected of a baby boy? What is expected as a baby girl? Many studies take the same young child, you can't tell male or female, strong differential treatment, whether that child is put in the pink clothes, signifying to people around them as a girl, versus the blue clothing signifying a boy. Goodness of fit refers to, and we'll see on the next slide, well, I'll let the next slide discuss it for us. So consider that little girl on the right. Will she be in a culture where she's told that she can be anything, a physicist, an astronaut, a doctor, whatever, or is she told that girls should prepare to be mommies? So if she can't see herself doing something, she's far less likely to reach for that something. So difficult temperament babies can still have a fabulous outcome as older children and adults. Much of the child's outcome depends on the goodness of fit between that particular child and the parents' rearing strategies. So a difficult child that's being raised by parents that are loving and consistent and stable will likely have a very strong positive outcome. But if that parent is challenged and barely able to hold on to their own life and take care of themselves, or they have strong negative emotions, they're unable to do basic behaviors in their environment to keep it simple and to keep it from going awry, to get angry and frustrated at the child, to take frustrations of other things and project them on the child, that same difficult child might have a very difficult and different outcome. So hopefully we'll have a strong goodness of fit between the parent and any child, or between any caretaker and that child. Let's consider two temperament extremes, extreme shyness and the other one, extreme sociability. Now I should mention there are cultural differences and preferences. In Asian cultures like China, shyness is acceptable and positive. Over sociability can actually be negative. But in case, anyway, sociability wants interactions, enjoys interactions, approaches interactions with other people. Shyness avoids interactions. Now, every child will go through, I won't say every child, but most children will go through stranger wariness, stranger anxiety, and also separation anxiety. So don't confuse those developmentally appropriate issues with temperament. And you should know that temperament is not stable until age 3, so don't conclude that your child is always going to be shy or very sociable until around age 3, and then you can say it's going to be more and more likely. Our next topic is attachment, which refers to the long-standing bond with others, and it's the basis of all future relationships. We've had studies in which we'll look at a child's attachment and look at their adult relationship characteristics, and there's a strong relationship. Just as a review, what sort of study would we use to do this? Would it be the kinship, or cross-sectional, longitudinal? If you're thinking longitudinal, you're correct. But let's look at some specific studies, starting when chances are you had an intro psych. And if not, well, you have it now. The famous Harry and also Margaret, his wife, Harlow study of monkey attachment. The two moms, often called the soft or cloth mother, and the wire, also called the hard mother. What did each provide? How was the baby's attachment measured on the testing day? And to which did the baby attach? So if you remember those three, if you remember the study well from intro psych and you can answer those questions, you can skip on to the next slide If you can't answer all three easily, go ahead and click and watch that short clip from the original Harlow experiment. So again, make sure that you're comfortable with the content before you proceed. For this module, we're going to discuss two different ways of measuring attachment. We're going to start with the classic strange situation test. Do you remember the name from Intro Psych of the researcher who developed it? It is possible that you didn't even cover the test in Intro Psych, and if you haven't, don't stress it, it's not fine. If you don't remember her name, you'll see it when you click the particular video. So even if you did cover this in Intro Psych, this is complex enough that you'll probably want to review it. So as you review it, record the general procedure of comings and goings of the people. You can ignore the attachment style information and the percentages. We'll cover that in kind of a pared down version in the next slide. So the strange situation test of Ainsworth is a great procedure for researchers, not so practical for the educator or perhaps social worker that wants to assess a particular child's attachment. So we need a practical alternative, and indeed we do have one. It's called the attachment Q-sort. Now maybe you discussed Q-sort in Intro Psych under personality tests. If you didn't, that's totally fine. But this would be, in this context, specifically a home observation tool of 90 different behaviors that the person doing would sort the good outcome versus the bad outcome for each one. And it's useful for children ages 1 to 5. So here's our practical alternative. Ainsworth's early research had 3 attachment styles, but she redefined it, so we'll go with her final product. Very good for parents or caretakers. The secure attachment style, and for the baby also, the secure attachment style is by far the most common. The baby acts distressed when they're alone, and they're comforted and relieved at mom's return, and all is well and all returns to normal. The insecure ambivalent, often just called ambivalent, show intense distress when they're left alone, or intense distress when they're left alone with a stranger, sometimes intense enough that the researchers decide that for that child the test has ended, let's bring mom back in or the caretaker back in. So you would think if the child was that intensely upset that they would be joyous at mom's return, but no. They often will wiggle out her arms or won't look at her, so they're intensely distressed, but they can't accept the nurture and comfort from the parent. The next one, insecure avoidant, often just called avoidant. They're comfortable alone, comfortable with a stranger. Basically, people come and people go, left alone, and they just keep doing what they're doing. Almost like they barely notice when mom leaves or returns. The last type by far is the most problematic, called disorganized. The child might freeze during much of this, or runs about frantically, or when mom returns, instead of diving into her arms, hides from her. On the next slide, we'll see the parental behaviors associated with the one positive outcome and the 3 different less than favorable outcomes. I thought it might be more fun for you to predict which parental style is associated with each term. So go ahead and take your best guess, and then go to the next listening icon to see if you were correct or how correct you were. So for first gives mixed, confused, and inappropriate responses. So maybe the child falls down and hurts himself, and the mother finds this hysterically funny. The child misbehaves, and they're ignored one time. They misbehave, and they're scolded another time. They're misbehaved, and they're videotaped the next time. A mother with active schizophrenia might be producing some of these mixed and inappropriate responses. That would be the least desirable outcome. That would be the disorganized pattern. Warm, responsive, consistent, the way we wish all parents would be, definitely the secure type. Insensitive, untimely. inconsistent. That would be the ambivalent. Insensitive and just rejecting the child, doesn't want to hold, doesn't caress, doesn't make time for, just basically almost non-parenting or as minimal parenting as possible. That would be associated with the avoidant style. Now, if we consider this in terms of high turnover daycare, a child that gets exposed to constant turnover in the daycare, which parenting style do you think might be most likely to occur? Poor quality daycare characterized by too few caretakers, turnover in caretakers, would be more likely to have a child go into the insecure type of attachment, and specifically the insecure ambivalent style. What happens if the child fails to form an attachment to someone? Attachment is almost universal in the human species, but still it can, under extreme circumstances, fail to occur. When it does, the child could be diagnosed with reactant attachment disorder. What causes it? Institutionalization, particularly in very impoverished countries, or even in the U.S. in the, say, early 1900s or before, where there's enough caretakers to meet the child's physical needs, but none of the emotional needs are being met. Babies are not held, comforted, there's almost no interaction, then reactant attachment disorder probably will be the outcome. Or, as we relate to daycare, frequent changes in caregivers, no stability, no relationships formed, no nurturing. The child doesn't feel safe, nurtured. Prolonged separation. So maybe the child is hospitalized and the parents are on a very have to work and the parents aren't close. Well, that could do. Severe parental mental illness, for example, active bipolar disorder, and in extreme cases the person can become delusional. Other psychotic conditions such as schizophrenia. What would the symptoms be? Well, we saw that child with the avoidant attachment style, unaffected when left alone, avoids touch. Again, that can be many things, but avoids touch. Emotionally detached. Much self-soothing, such as rocking, thumb sucking at an inappropriate age. Cannot experience empathy, cannot experience guilt. Is depressed virtually all the time, or is angry all the time. These, if they're not addressed, can lead to a lifelong pattern of no relationship formation with others, and even potential sociopathy. So critical for being addressed, and the older the child, the less likely a successful treatment can be implemented. Let's consider self-regulation. This refers to efforts to control one's own emotions, the negative ones anyway. When it's not developed sufficiently, it can lead to the individual being anxious much of the time, or even to various mental health disorders in children and adults. For example, if you did intro psych, and definitely if you'll take up normal psych, you'll learn about borderline personality disorder. The person's ability to self-regulate emotions is extremely poorly developed. Lack of this ability can also lead to uncontrolled anger and violence. Recently on NPR, National Public Radio, they were interviewing the Albany police chief, and the individual is indicating that about 80% of murders come from situations that in the past might have been just people angry or calling the police or perhaps a fist fight, but now guns are pulled out and people are killed or at least severely injured. So instead of trying to ramp down the individual's anger, try to leave, try to make yourself feel less angry, people ramp up their anger and keep stoking their own personal anger and stoking it till they get to the point where they think it's acceptable to injure or kill another person. So we're seeing a lot of this problems currently in our society. Let's consider how adults can help. So even adult self-regulation can be taught. For example, many therapies teach the skill of enhancing self-control, self-regulation, particularly behavior therapies such as cognitive behavior therapies, but many therapies also. So, but how can the adult help the child who needs to develop this? Well, one is co-regulation. You model the behavior yourself. So if mom is very afraid of a situation, maybe driving on a snowy road, instead of making statements and showing obvious fear, she can model calmness. So even if the parent is really upset on the inside, given whatever situation is going on, to regulate, to show calmness and proper behaviors teaches the child how to face scary and conflicting situations. Also, you can help children by teaching them the language so they can understand their feelings. I see you feel angry now. I see you feel afraid. So if the child learns to identify their emotions, they're more likely to be able to understand them and work with them and self-regulate them. Also, teach and reinforce self-instruction. So children will naturally do this on their own to a certain degree. They'll give themselves instructions. I gotta be good. I gotta be good. I gotta be good. So teach that sort of behavior. So if a child's in a scary situation, I think I see that you're afraid now. And then maybe say, oh, your dolly, she's afraid now too. Let's help your dolly. So they'll teach the dolly, it's okay to feel afraid. We're going to, so they can basically take care of the dolly and calm the dolly. And by, of course, they're really calming themselves. So teach them for self-instruction, remind them on self-instruction, and reinforcement. Oh, you are doing such a good job. Dolly is no longer afraid. Of course, they're not going to be afraid either. I have attached a wonderfully useful self-regulation video clip for young children, and do expect to see a question based on it on your text quiz.